I was wrong. James Conner has to have surgery on his foot. He'll be out the rest of the year. Zay Jones is in concussion protocol. Why I didn't tell you, I honestly did not know what happened on the last offensive play of the game, so I apologize for that. I just didn't get it to you guys. Just real quick, talking about James, obviously, because I know you guys are going to ask me about it. One of our leaders, a captain, you hate that it happens. I feel terrible, but I know he'll take the right attitude and bounce back. Picking up that slack, both the player and the person, we're all going to have to collectively do it, truthfully. But that's a bummer, just like all our guys that have gotten hurt. But I just know what type of person and player he is. It's tough to replace, but we have to. So that's what we'll do. Looking back, just real quick recap in San Francisco, watching all three phases, just disappointing, honestly, to not come away with a win there. That's a good football team on the road, had our chances and didn't convert our chances, and that's life in the NFL. So, the old adage of coaching better and playing better, that is true. But again, I think, even after coming off the 2 wins, now I'm going way back, but it's correctable things. So we just got to make sure that we're mindful of it and do it. Or I'm going to be saying the same things to you guys over and over and over and sound like a broken record. So we won't want to do that. So it's my job to get it corrected. That's what we'll do. 72 hours, 75 hours, we kick off here. So obviously a different week. That's different than our routine. A lot of challenges of this week playing, like I said, in 3 days now. A lot of variables that go into that. We have to handle those things the right way to get ready to go win a football game at home against a really good team. So that's what we're working on right now.
Just to clarify, it's James' foot, not his ankle.
Correct. Yeah, I gave you the wrong. It's his foot.
What are the correctable issues that stand out most to you?
Fundamentals, pad level, hand placement, covering people, catching the ball, throwing the ball, running the ball. I mean, really, Teo, it is. And that's why, I just ripped off how many, everybody in there. And that's why I told them after the game, and that's why I really feel like, for all 3 units to play better individually, we all have to play better, and obviously that starts with the coaches. We got to coach better, but those little details and it's really some techniques that we're hurting ourselves, and you got to do those things right because, the NFL, you're in tight games, and if you don't do those things right, enough of those things right, it's hard to win. So our guys know that. Our guys have done that. We got to do it more consistently. There's no doubt.
Players typically talk about the 24-hour rule, giving themselves that day to dwell on it. Is that something you subscribe to? And if with it being such a short week, is that something that has to get thrown out?
For sure this week, you know what I mean? I told them when they wake up today, we had them in to do treatment, and they lifted today. We did not meet with them today. We'll get on to Seattle tomorrow. I told them if you're, and it's hard because I did it today. I caught myself in a meeting, talking about a play that wasn't real pleased about, but we're game planning on 1st and 2nd down Seattle. It's I can't be thinking about that. So you kind of got to block that out. It's hard to, but we do have to control that. But when they come in tomorrow, there's nothing about San Francisco because we got to be full focused on Seattle.
Season-ending injuries are obviously a part of football. You mentioned James as the person. In your experience, can certain injuries kind of sit heavier in the locker room?
That's a good question. Honestly, they all do. They really do. But he's a vet that's played at a high level. That's a captain. That's a vocal leader on our team. They know, everybody in this building knows what he means to our organization. And that's not to diminish anybody else's impact. It's really not. But he heavy as the crown. He does wear a big crown, and so we just got to pick up the slack.
Coach, we've talked 3 weeks now about just the ability to close out a game offensively. We haven't been able to do it yet. And you said coach better, play better, but What can you do to just get that mental side of things where it needs to be?
Yeah, I mean, keep putting them in those spots and practice. You know, that's my job, which maybe I got to facilitate a little. Not maybe, I do have to facilitate a little bit more. Got to have it type situations for us because we've been in some of those and we haven't executed. 4-minute mechanics, which is what we didn't execute the last 2 weeks now. Really the last 3 weeks. When you talk about 4-minute mechanics, what's that look like? And then just execution of what's being called, you know, and all of those games come out a little bit different by the score and where the situation is, and you're taking a lot of things into account on my end. But I thought we put them in pretty good spots. We just got to do a little bit better.
There's a lot of players over the years who have talked about that there's no one harder on themselves than that person.
Yeah.
Marvin has talked about that. Is there ever a concern when a guy is harder on himself than anybody else when he might be struggling and you worry about him getting in his own head because of it?
Not for me, but I think you have to have enough self-awareness to know, yes, we're all our own worst critic. I think anybody would tell you that. You guys probably are your own worst critics too, you know what I mean? Like no one's gonna look in the mirror harder than you are. But there is a point that you have to let that go, take the learning experience and move on. So that's kind of what we preach with all our players and the coaches as well. You know, they're sitting in there on a plane and, you know, after a game like that you feel you had a chance to win, you know, and everyone's kind of taking the arrow in the forehead and looking in the mirror and it's like, okay, like I get it, but that's, you know, you got to move on, you know. So you take the learning experience from wins and losses and move on.
When it comes to the running game, do you have enough time to kind of tweak the scheme to what these guys do well?
Well, that's a really good question, Josh. I was just talking to Mark about that. Like, talk to the offense about that first, but talking to Mark about that too. You know, I went back and kind of looked, and, you know, I think we called somewhere around 24 runs, and 17 of them are not efficient. We have to get that better because the hat that I wear, you know, or that I did wear on defense, when you're not running the ball efficiently, you're making it a lot easier on the defense to defend you. That's what I would say. And there's not a lot of good calls, run or pass, when you're behind the sticks. So you're kind of playing, and you might not, you know, when I say behind the sticks on second down, you got to look at like play types. What are they defending, and what do you have to call? And so I think, like, to answer your question, it's a brand new, this team is significantly different than San Francisco, right? So we're going to have different plan for it, a different plan to attack Seattle than we did San Francisco. With saying that, our fundamentals and our techniques have to show up a little bit better. They got to improve from this last week, what we did, and we got to realize why runs aren't being efficient and how everybody fits into that. So I think if we just control that, we'll put them in the right spots, you know, that's our job, but then let's control the technique part of it and make some hay.
What's the confidence level that Trey Benson can take on a bigger workload moving forward?
Yeah, I'm fully confident in Trey. I really am. I think, you know, the more he plays, the more comfortable you see him getting and the better he's going to be. I feel good with all those backs stepping in.
I know yesterday you were asked about the play calling. You were quick to respond on that. After watching the film, do you see anything that could change or needs to be changed in
No.
selection?
No.
Back to the injuries, how is Paris Johnson doing?
He's doing well.
Is there a chance he goes this week?
Yeah, so I guess all of our guys that on the injury front, tough week because we're not really going to practice totally. So those guys that weren't healthy enough to play this last week will kind of come down to game time, I'm sure.
The issues in the run game, are they more running back centric, offensive line centric? How would you?
I'd say all 11. You know, I really would. I think everyone's got to do a little bit better.
I think you guys are 27th in passing yards right now. I mean, I know that game situations matter and stuff like that, and it plays off the running game, but do you feel like you're getting as much as you need to get from the receivers?
Yeah, that's a very good point because, like, I always laugh. You can take a stat and make it look how you want it to look, you know. where my mind goes is we haven't had a lot of passes, you know, after the second game. A 3-game sample size with stats to me is you can maybe see a trend, but I don't think it's the end-all be-all. That's why I don't hang my hat on stats. The good thing last week or yesterday too, we didn't turn it over, so we did a good job there. We won the takeaway battle, still lost a game. On a walk-off, that's typically what's going to happen. Meaning games are going to be really close. When they win the explosive play battle, you win the takeaway battle. That's probably pretty close, a pretty close game. I think just like the run game, it should be more. It needs to be more efficient. I think we're doing some really good things. I think everyone has to do a little bit better, you know, and that's the pass game on defense. That's the run game on defense. It's collectively as a team, you know. And again, when the defense knows that you have to pass in known pass, they have an advantage. So we need to make sure that we're playing a little bit more straight up on second down.
One of those trends with the passing game is that your air yards per attempt are near the bottom of the league. Well, why do you think that's been the case?
A number of factors. I think, you know, I'm pleased with what's getting called to push the ball down the field. You know, sometimes they have a say too. So a couple plays came up yesterday that they did a good job getting underneath it and then did a good job tackling the check down, you know, where that's where the ball should go when they play that type of coverage structure. But, you know, when you can't run it, it's going to be hard to pass it. And when you can't pass it, it's going to be hard to run it, you know. So they go hand in hand, you know. And so if you can get the run game going a little bit better, you will get more advantageous looks to push the ball down the field. When you can't run it, they're taking away you pushing the ball down the field. So it works hand in hand. That's a really good point, Teo. That stat, that stat to me works hand in hand with the run game, what the run game's doing, you know. So we just that's a long-winded answer to, yeah, that needs to be better, but can be a direct correlation to what else is going on in the game too.
So it's not a philosophical thing that you want to keep things close to the line of scrimmage?
If that's what it needs to do to win the game, you know what I mean, or that's how they're defending you. But no, I do think what our 2 winning stats are explosive plays, you know. So when you talk about pass games that are explosive, there's 2 ways to generate them in the pass game, is catching runs and throwing the ball down the field. So that's important to me.
Were you okay with Kyler's checkdowns this week?
I was, because of what they presented to him. You know, I knew he was going to rip the one and the pocket kind of collapse. You know, it's not just, it's everybody, you know.
We're only a few weeks in here, but it's pretty clear the NFC West is going to be a battle. Looks like all 4 teams will probably be in the mix. You guys are within an eyelash of being 3-0, but now, you know, you turn around, you've got another divisional opponent. Losing Thursday would mean 0-2. Can you just talk about the importance of staying in this race about a quarter into the season after Thursday?
Yeah. How do I answer that one? That's a good question. 3 games in, a lot of ball to be played. We understand the teams in our division are good teams. I know we're a good team. You got to win games, you know what I mean? And they understand the importance of playing at home versus a divisional opponent. You don't want to get knocked down too far, but there's a lot of ball to be played.
Darius Robinson's been kind of quiet as far as the stat sheet goes. How have you judged this?
I think he's playing well. I did talk to him about, I think, you know, that's some noise that we talk about. I know he wants to get on the stat sheet too, you know what I mean? But the most important thing is just do your job. Don't press to make plays, because you'll start playing bad if you do that. I think he's doing a good job right now. I know there's things that he's working on. To Darren's point, your own worst critic, you know, he's hard on himself, and I love that. I like that. Because I know they care, and he's all about ball. He wants to impact the game and help us win. But I think he's doing a good job right now, and it's just a matter of time before he starts filling it up.
With the downfield passing, I know there are things that defenses are going to take that away. Are you pleased with your receivers' ability, and I'm not just talking about Marv here, but as a unit, their ability to get open on those downfield?
Yeah, I am. I am, Teo. Like, I've seen him do it, you know what I mean? And like in games, Whether the ball goes to him or not, I've seen him get open versus in practice, you know, in training camp, all those things. But, you know, you're playing new schemes, different opponents, different environments. We got to be able to handle all that and execute at a high level when we need it, you know. So it's time on task, you know. It's still early. I told the coaches, like, the sky's not falling. There's no panic in my game. I told the team that. I haven't lost confidence. You know, we lost a game, you know, and things over the first 3 weeks that we haven't done a good enough job. We got time to correct it, but we got to correct it.
Were the drops say just a matter of concentration or focus?
Yeah, I would talk to receivers on that. Why I say that is I don't know.
Everyone talks about, you know, touchdowns come in bunches. Can you say the same thing for drops?
I don't know that either. It's a fundamental. We got to make sure we catch the ball.
Mac Wilson Sr. was flying around all over the field. How much have you seen from him just taking that step up as the green dot in that Mike linebacker spot?
Yeah, I thought if you asked him, I thought he played. I think that he played really well week one, and in his mind, your toughest critic, Darren. I'm using the hell out of that right now. I'm my own toughest critic. I better do a better job. He felt like he didn't play as good, I think. And I thought he absolutely lit it up yesterday. I mean, just, you know, and he had some tough downs, I would call them, that he won. He's doing a heck of a job. You know what I mean? With all that we put on his plate, he's really, in essence, playing a new position. We're 3 games in now, and he's impacting the game in a positive way. So he's another one that's, you know, a vet that stays steady. You know, it's good to have those guys, you know. So there's no panic in his game either. But I thought he played really well.
Seems like Calais and Josh Sweat are regularly in the backfield. What has been the impact of having those two guys?
Huge, yeah. I mean, those guys are doing a good job affecting the pass. And we got some other guys too that are doing a good job. And again, that stat sheet, you know, those guys are showing up. Sometimes they have some freedom, and other guys don't. You know what I mean? So, you know, for those guys to impact the game, other guys have to do their job as well. That's how I would say that one. So. But yeah, very pleased with where they're at. I think they're both going to keep doing it. You know, I really do, and we need them to.
5 sacks through 3 games. Are you happy with that number? And if not, how do you get more?
I don't know. I'm kind of on to Seattle. Like I feel like defensively we have to do a lot of things better. With saying that, I feel like we've done a lot of good things too. Do I always think you can affect the quarterback more? Absolutely.
Coach, you've been under the microscope quite a bit lately for play calls and how you're doing making the play calls. What's your response to the outside noise? Do you have any?
Not really. Nature of the business. You know, that's what we signed up for. It's why we do what we do. We love this game. We love why we do it. So not overly concerned with it.
What are your thoughts? You know, obviously losing James Conner's a big blow for the run game. How do you kind of make up for that, try to, at least to the aggregate?
Starting point, obviously, I feel terrible for him. You know, I love that guy, just what he brings, the way he works, the way he's carried himself his whole career. So I feel really bad. Anytime somebody gets hurt, you feel bad for the player. I think that's where your mind goes first. Past that, I feel really good about the group. Trey, Amari, Bam, all the other guys in that room to pick up the slack and kind of, you know, pick up right where we left off, knowing that there were times in the last 2 years James has not been out there and those guys stepped up. I thought did a really nice job, so need that to happen this year as well.
The short week, do you have enough time to kind of retool the run game to utilize their strengths, or just kind of like we're just going to go with what we've been doing just to get through this week and then reevaluate after?
I think you always have time to try to play to the strengths of the people that are going to be on the field, even in a short week. You know, you're going to have to do it quicker, but I think you're going to find time in the day to make sure you do.
JG was talking about how with the 24-hour rule, that doesn't really happen with it being a short week, and that when everyone wakes up, they kind of have to flush the game. Is that hard when the game is still so fresh on your mind?
Yes and no. To some extent, it happens on the plane. Like, you're trying to buy every hour you can. So you step on the plane, you buzz the tape, you learn from it, and you have to move on right away. We got a great opponent coming to our house on Thursday night, excited to be in front of our fans. So that focus shifts so quickly. But I think that's also a blessing at times, and it goes both ways, win and lose. So, but there's very little time left on the previous game, regardless of when you play, certainly on a short week.
With 4 of the same offensive linemen, same offensive coordinator, how do you explain kind of the step back that the run game has taken?
Again, we got to break it down, look at it. I think it's a small sample size in 3 games. You're never going to judge the entire product on 3 games. We got to look at the things that we can do better collectively, whether it's, looking at the technique that we're using up front in terms of how we're blocking things, the way it's being called, the way it's being schemed, why things aren't working necessarily the way we want them to, and also not abandon it just because we played some good fronts in tough environments and maybe hasn't come out quite the way we wanted to at times.
Do you think losing Clayton Adams has impacted that?
No.
Is there a specific approach that you and the rest of the coaching staff feel like you need to take to build up the confidence of Marv, or is the best way to do that just keep throwing him the ball?
Yeah, I don't put a ton of weight on that because I know he's a guy who has confidence in his own ability. I certainly have a ton of confidence in him. He's really hard on himself when he feels like he didn't live up to his standard, but I think he's going to be a big part of this offense, and I have full confidence in his ability to do that moving forward.
You seem really hard on himself post-game for that, just because he is so professional even at a young age. Do you have a conversation with him or players who might have a game like that where they're hard on themselves, or just reminding them who they are, or you just kind of let the players go through their process?
It goes different ways with different people. I think one of the key parts of being a coach is understanding who you're dealing with, having a really good feel for the players that you work with, and understanding how you want to bring the best out of them. I think that's a big part of it. So with him, there's certain ways I'm going to approach it. With other guys, it might be a little bit different, but we all are our harshest critic, and I appreciate that about him, but not concerned about it moving forward.
How would you evaluate how Beacham stepped up for Paris?
I thought he did a really nice job. He played, 700 snaps last year in a very similar role, so there's, really no nervousness on our end about him going in there and playing at a high level against a good front with some good age players, so was really pleased with how he did.
How do you address the drops with your receivers and your running backs?
It's hard. I think at the end of the day, physical mistakes are going to happen. Certainly we want to get back to the details of the fundamentals of focusing on the football, locking things in, finishing the catch, all those things that go into it. But at the end of the day, I know that, if I can't pick out names individually, but the guys that had those issues, it's not a reoccurring theme. So I think it's one of those things that in a small sample size can happen at times, and you almost don't want to dwell on too much. Hey, move on. You catch the ball really well. You got great hands. Not something I'm worried about.
Do you get to a point at any point, I know you've talked a lot about the ball, the passes have to go where kind of it's dictated, you got to be smart about it. Do you ever get to the point where you think to yourself, we have a problem here because the receivers aren't being able to produce enough?
No, I wouldn't say it ever goes that direction.
Coach, you get the ball yesterday with 3:10 to go, you're up by 2 points, all you need to do is get a couple first downs, you can't do it. What's going on in that situation?
Yeah, we were able to get the first one, so we got close, and then obviously on the second set of downs, weren't able to convert there on third down, which obviously cost us. It's a tough situation. It's high leverage. They know you want to run the ball. You want to run the ball. You got to stay in bounds. Had some opportunities, made some plays. Thought Kyler did a great job on that first down play to start the drive, getting 9 yards, doing a smart thing, sliding and staying in bounds to make them use their timeouts. But really kind of, obviously didn't get it done the way we wanted to there at the end.
You guys are near the bottom of the league in air yards per attempt, not pushing the ball downfield. Why do you think that's been the case?
I think it's a combination of things. Certainly when you are struggling in the run game, you're not getting quite the sell you're used to, or some of the bigger opportunities down the field. I think the other, just based on the teams that we played, a lot of those teams are really good at eliminating explosives based on the way they play coverage and structure their defense. So I think both of those things play into it.
Do you think on Center yesterday there were opportunities for Kyler to push the ball downfield that he didn't take?
Not really, no. I mean, we pushed the ball down the field. I can think of, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 or 6 passes in the second half that probably went 30-plus air yards down the field and, hit a couple of them, which kind of got us back in the game and gave us the lead there at one point. So, it's something we're going to continue to look at and work at, but not something I'm overly concerned with.
With that small sample size of 3 games, what is your process of, this is our identity, this is what we've worked towards, versus, okay, this is going to require maybe some major tweaks. With just a small sample size, what is your process of what you're changing or how much you change with that?
I think that's a great question. I think that's kind of the balance as a coach that you have to make sure you're very aware of. You don't want to run away from things that maybe you're good at, but you haven't done enough, or you haven't got a good look at, or maybe you just happen to get in the wrong situation. But at the same point, you have to be aware of, hey, maybe we do need to emphasize this a little bit more, move in that direction. I think we're always going to be working through that balance, and early in the year, it's a little bit finer because you have less evidence to go off of.
Closing out games now has been an issue 3 weeks in a row.
I didn't hear this at the beginning, sorry.
closing out games.
Mhm.
At what point does it become more than just a few tweaks? That's kind of a big concern for you.
If we stop closing them out. Jokingly, we did it twice. We didn't do it, yesterday. And it's funny, like, we come in here after the first two wins, and you're like, hey, we got it done. Well, there were still errors or issues in those opportunities. And then yesterday, obviously, weren't able to get it done. I think the mindset for me and the mindset for the entire offense and the team to some extent is just because one or two plays weren't made and we didn't get it done doesn't mean the process or what we want to do during the course of the week changes. I think that's really important to keep in mind. So whatever we did to put ourselves in position to win, and then not do it. Hey, if there is a difference, great, let's try to identify it. If there's not, let's stick to the process, get back to getting on the field and going through the fundamentals, making sure we're greased up for the next week.
With Kyler, you guys have talked repeatedly about kind of wanting him to make the right decision with the ball, be willing to check it down. How do you find the balance for him of being willing to check it down but not taking away some of his kind of natural innate aggression?
Yeah, it's a balance that we've talked about in here. I think he's doing a really nice job of that. Just yesterday, I know he pulled it down and made some great plays with his feet in some critical situations, got us some third downs, created the big PI late in the game. And then there were some checkdowns that I thought James took one for a first down early in the game. So I think he's doing a really nice job of finding that balance.
JG talked about putting the team in practice in more of a 4-minute situation. There's a little sense of urgency for guys. Do you feel like that's necessary to get guys thinking about we've got to perform in this situation?
Absolutely. I think you're always trying to put them in situations throughout the week so that their mindset shifts to game day so it's as real as possible.
What gives you confidence that you guys can up the point total at the end of the game, generate more points, more explosives, more yardage?
What gives me I think the guys that we have in the room and the mindset that those guys walk into the building with every day. I think it's been great since really the moment that this season started. So it's not something, hey, when it's not hitting quite the way we want or it's not perfectly done the way that we all hoped it was going to, I'm not nervous about where we're at or where we're going because of that, I guess.
Trey Benson's your featured back. How equipped is he at this point?
Very. I think he's extremely ready for that opportunity. I think he's always prepared himself for that. I think that's the nature of this business, and he certainly, I think, has learned a ton from James over the last year and a half to be ready for that opportunity, similar to the way James was early in his career.
What do you know about Mike McDonald's defense? You played Seattle twice, obviously, so what do you know you're getting Thursday night?
Yeah, we played him twice, and we played him in Baltimore our first year here. So a lot of familiarity with him and the system. It's a really talented group. I think they've done a great job of building that roster, and then the scheme is dynamic. They mix personnels, they mix front structures, a lot of different coverage and pressure looks. I think Mike does a really nice job. It's going to be a big challenge for us.
Are there things you can take from their game against the Saints and your game against the Saints?
Yeah, absolutely. And they played the Niners. So there's a lot of similarities from the teams that we played and they played. So you're certainly going to look at that and try to evaluate what they did and how they did it and where we can take advantage of that.
You've said a few times, not just this week, that you're happy with the job your receivers are doing at getting open. And it's not necessarily showing up in the stat sheet. So why are you happy with kind of the job that group is doing as a whole?
I think, one, I see the work that they put in every day and kind of the effort that they put into the game and the way that they're, winning their one-on-ones in some critical situations. Like I look at, Zay Jones showing up on 3rd and 11 there, in the game. Mike showing up on 4th and 4. Some big completions to Marv late in that game for some chunks that got us back in the game. So I think those are going to continue to happen, and certainly we're going to try to put them in those positions over and over again.
Overall, how do you feel like the defense performed last week?
Some good and bad. Obviously you'd like to finish the game out. That's probably the biggest thing. But definitely things that we can improve on.
What were some of the bad things that you'd like to improve on?
A little bit more wins. We did a good job, being color on color, as I'd say, in the back end. There's just some of those contested catches. You'd like to win a few more of those. A couple mental things that we could have done better, not hurt ourselves. Did some good things in the run game. A couple of things to clean up in the run game when they were able to kind of pop off runs. I felt like overall the run game was a little hit or miss. So if we clean up some of those runs that went for 8+ yards, that would help us.
Nick, how tough is it to be out on the field late in the game? All three now, you guys have been out on the field trying to save the win. How tough is that on the defense?
I mean, that's a situation we embrace. We'd love to go out there and close the game, and we got to do a better job of finishing that game.
There's 10 different plays, 10 different things happen, but overall, what could you guys have done better on that last drive?
I'll start with myself. A couple of things play calling wise that I could have done better. and then it's small execution things. When teams are in a 2-minute drive and, they got 2 minutes and they need a field goal, your margin for error is pretty small. So, you have to keep them behind the sticks because it's one explosive play that all of a sudden you're defending 10 yards, and the game's over. So, they did a good job of, getting the ball out of their hands and kind of chipping it down. And then, credit to Kyle, great call on the screen. We were not in the right defense for that. So, hats off to them. He called that drive really good and they executed. And, I think if we do a couple things here or there, we can improve and win that situation next time.
On that last drive, what goes into having guys play off receiver compared to playing up and press?
A lot of things. The situation, what they like to do, and how you're going to call it. So knowing going into it, what we were going to stick to and what that situation was and how much you need to be able to challenge receivers. You don't want to give up an explosive because it's one play and all of a sudden ball game, but you can't let them chip down the field when they have time. So that's something that we'll tell the corners before we go out what we're going to do. Mid-series, it could change. So they got a lot on their plates in that regard, and that's something that, Smitty and myself are constantly talking about going into a 2-minute drive.
Matt continues to be a problem in the middle. Has he exceeded your expectations with that, just taking over that new role and running with it?
No, I knew he was going to do a good job. He probably had his best game, and he's just a leader. He's got to see on his chest for a reason, and so he's embracing that to the fullest, and he's playing good ball.
I know it's still early on in the process in terms of your evaluation with the Seahawks, but in what ways is Sam Darnold as the Seahawks quarterback different than the Sam Darnold's Viking quarterback that you faced last year?
There's similarities and differences, different system. I think Clint does a phenomenal job with his quarterbacks of getting them to play fast. And so you see Sam right now, he's playing really fast. I thought he played fast last year too, but it's in a different way. It's much more uses of personnel, a lot more personnel variety, different run game than when he was in Minnesota, different ways that they'll move the pocket a little bit. So, same player. He had an amazing year last year, and he kind of showed the league that he's a starting quarterback, and he can play winning football. And I think so far this year, he's proven that.
How did you feel Keaton did stepping in a little bit more on the defense?
Yeah, it was good. Not a lot of plays, but the plays he got in there for, he did a good job of executing. Broke up a pass on that one, so he did a good job.
At the start of the season, you won more turnovers from your defense, so back-to-back weeks with multiple turnovers, 8 points on the board. How are they taking what they're learning on the practice field and on the field on game day?
Execution, playing with high motor, high violence, that's what leads to those plays and, capitalizing it. And sometimes guys just make unbelievable plays 2 weeks ago, Sweaty, that could just be a sack and he hunts the ball. Mac, taxi arm, Barron capitalizes with the pick. Rabbit's play yesterday, that was just being a playmaker out there, So it's ultimately taken what we work on, whether that's specific, techniques, and a lot of times that can lead to takeaway, or it is just playing the down the correct way. Rabbits yesterday played with really good technique, ball comes to him, he capitalizes on it. So it's just, applying practice into the game.
Nick, on a short week, is there a balance between what you scheme up and versus what the guys can absorb in a couple of days?
Yeah, you have to be able to take into account understanding that your preparation is a little bit less, but I think our guys can handle a lot. We're not really the type of defense to make stuff up every week. So, anything that we pull is going to be stuff that they've executed before. But that's not to say that we can't pull from the whole toolbox.
Obviously, with Will Johnson, you guys are hoping that's a shorter-term absence, but how do you feel like you did replacing Garrett at nickel, kind of with all the moving pieces related to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces. Credit to JT. It's not easy to be taking very minimal reps at that spot, throughout training camp and then in the beginning of the season, and then just step in there and play. And that's a that's a high stress position, you know, specifically this past week, because that's so much of where their pass game was living, you know, between the numbers. And so he did a really good job. Like, and then, you know, he's playing safety in other packages. So not easy. He's got a lot on his plate, and he definitely stepped up to the challenge.
How do you, McCaffrey had an unusual line, right? 15 targets, 88 yards, but maybe not as efficient as he always is against the league's best receiving back. How do you feel like you guys did?
Yeah, there's a couple plays that I wish we would have, you know, made the tackle or, you know, not busted, which led to some plays. I mean, he is a really good player, so there's going to be times where he's the beginning of the progression, and he had a couple of those balls, and I thought we did a good job of we were there, you know, in phase with him and got it down. And then there's a couple times where you're taking away other concepts, and, you know, the check down is open, and, you know, he's able to, you know, get what he can there, and we did a good job of tackling him on those ones where he wasn't the first progression. So, you know, if that's where we wanted them to go with the ball, then that's fine. You know, if he's the primary and we need to be taking that away and that's what's hurting us, then that's not as good.
With Jackson Smith and Jigba, what sort of challenge is that?
Yeah, he's playing really good right now. He's tough. Wins contested catches, can create separation. To me, he is a first level, second level, and third level player, meaning like he'll beat you on choice routes, he'll beat you on intermediates, and then he can take the top off. So he's playing really good ball right now. You know, he's definitely a huge part of their offense, and he presents a challenge.
What is the difference between his game now versus 2 years ago when you first faced him as a rookie?
I would say he's probably just improved in every area. You know, like you see him winning those contested catches. You see him with the ball in his hands, you know, getting rack. And you see him just create separation. So I would say his whole game has improved.
With Darius Robinson, how would you assess his play so far this year?
He's playing good. You know, I think up front in general right now, we're doing a really good job, you know, winning one-on-ones in the run game. We did a good job pushing the pocket. We won a couple times inside, led to some sacks, or, you know, Clay's safety yesterday. So, you know, and Darius is right in there doing the same thing. So he's playing good right now. Got things to improve on still, but I like where he's at.
Yeah, do you think that's not translating to the sack and pressure numbers for him?
You know, I think those will come over time. You know, I'm not too worried about the statistics there.